The champagne glass slipped from my fingers, shattering against the marble floor of our Cherry Creek penthouse. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Denver's skyline glittered like scattered diamonds. But all I could focus on were the divorce papers spread across our Italian leather dining table. Jessica's signature was already there, bold and decisive, next to a yellow sticky note that read, "Marcus, I'm done pretending. My lawyer will contact you. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 6 years of marriage, reduced to legal documents, and a post-it note." But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was discovering those papers while Jessica was upstairs laughing on a video call with her sister Emma, saying words that would haunt me forever. "Trust me, Em. Marcus is so predictable. He'll probably cry, beg me to reconsider, maybe even threaten to hurt himself. These sensitive guys are all the same. I've already got Brandon lined up. He's got that new Tesla dealership and doesn't waste time on feelings. Standing there in my scrubs, still exhausted from a 12-hour shift helping stroke patients regain their mobility, I realized my wife saw me as nothing more than a pathetic cliché. The man who had worked double shifts to pay for her MBA, who had postponed his own dreams of opening a sports rehabilitation clinic, who had been there through every career crisis and family drama. I was just predictable, Marcus. The emotional burden she was finally ready to discard. The next morning arrived with the kind of crisp October air that usually energized me for my runs through Washington Park. Instead, I sat at our kitchen island, staring at my untouched coffee while Jessica moved around me like I was invisible furniture. She was dressed in her power suit, the charcoal gray Armani I'd bought her for her promotion, and her auburn hair was pulled back in that severe bun she wore when she meant business. "I assume you've seen the papers," she said without looking up from her phone, her fingers flying across the screen, in what I assumed was another text conversation with Brandon. The casual indifference in her voice was more cutting than any screaming match could have been. "Jessica, we need to talk about this." She finally glanced at me, and I saw something in her green eyes I'd never noticed before. Genuine irritation at my continued existence in her space. "What's there to discuss? I've made my decision. My lawyer says, if you cooperate, we can have this wrapped up in 60 days. The clinical efficiency of it all made my chest tighten. This was the woman who used to leave little notes in my lunch bag, who would fall asleep on my shoulder during movie nights, who had once told me I was her safe harbor in every storm. Now she was calculating the fastest exit strategy. 6 years, Jess. Don't they mean anything to you? She set down her phone and looked at me with the kind of patience reserved for particularly slow children. Marcus, be honest. Out. Last time we were actually happy? When's the last time we talked about anything besides your patience or my work stress? We've been roommates for 2 years, and we both know it. The terrible thing was, she wasn't entirely wrong. We had fallen into routines, become 2 ships passing in our expensively decorated night. But I had thought that was normal, the natural evolution of a marriage settling into comfortable partnership. I hadn't realized Jessica had been cataloging every comfortable silence as evidence of incompatibility. "We could try counseling," I offered, knowing even as I said it that I sounded exactly as desperate as she'd predicted. Jessica's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. "Counseling? Marcus, I don't want to fix this. I want out. I want to feel excited about my life again, not obligated to manage someone else's emotions." The word manage hit me like a physical blow. Was that what I had become to her? A emotional burden to be managed rather than a partner to be loved? My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. "Drinks tonight. You sounded rough on the phone yesterday." I had called him after discovering the papers, though I couldn't remember much of what I'd said. The whole evening felt like a fever dream. Blah. "Stay at Ryan's place while we figure out the logistics," I said, standing up from the island. My coffee had grown cold, a perfect metaphor for everything else in this house. "Actually," Jessica said, not looking up from her phone again, "Emma's flying in from Paris next week. She'll be staying in the guest room for a few months while she finds a place. It might be better if you found somewhere more permanent." Jessica's younger sister, the one who had been studying art curation in France for the past 3 years. I had vague memories of a quiet, Serious girl who always seemed to disappear into corners at family gatherings, content to observe rather, than participate in the Wilson family dramatics. She had been Jessica's opposite in every way. Where Jessica commanded attention, Emma faded into backgrounds. "Fine," I said, grabbing my keys from the counter. "I'll pack some things and be out by tonight, Marcus." Jessica's voice stopped. Me at the kitchen doorway? For a moment I thought I heard something softer in her tone, maybe regret or second thoughts. I turned hopefully. "Don't forget to transfer the utilities into my name. And the homeowners association fees are due next week." Even her afterthoughts were purely practical. The drive to Denver General felt longer than usual. Traffic on I-25. Moving like molasses under the weight of morning rush hour, I kept replaying Jessica's words, trying to understand when exactly I had stopped being her husband and started being her obligation. Had I really become so predictable, so emotionally needy? At the hospital, I threw myself into my work with the kind of desperate focus that worried my colleagues. Mrs. Patterson, recovering from her second hip replacement, noticed my distraction immediately. "Dr. Thompson, you look like someone ran over your dog," she said as I helped her through her range of motion exercises. "Everything all right at home?" The kindness in her voice almost broke me. Here was a 74-year-old woman dealing with chronic pain and mobility issues, and she was worried about my problems. "Just some personal stuff, Mrs. Patterson. Nothing that won't work itself out." "Well," she said, gripping the parallel bars with determination that put my own resolve to shame, "sometimes the things we think will destroy us end up setting us free." My Harold used to say that. Her late husband had been a patient here too, years ago, and I remembered how devoted they had been to each other. 52 years of marriage, ended only by his stroke. They had held hands during every therapy session, Harold encouraging her through every painful step of her own recovery. That was what I had thought Jessica and I would become, partners, weathering life's storms together. Instead, we had become strangers, sharing a mortgage. Dr. Patricia Hayes found me during my lunch break, sitting in the hospital's meditation garden and staring at my untouched sandwich. "Want to talk about it?" she asked, settling onto the bench. Beside me, Patricia had been my mentor since my first day at Denver General. A woman who could read people's pain with the same precision she used to diagnose physical ailments. "My wife filed for divorce," I said simply. Patricia nodded like this, explained everything. "The one who never comes to the hospital events, who missed your promotion celebration because of a work conference?" I'd never consciously noticed Patricia's observations, but now they felt like gentle accusations. "She has a demanding career, so do you, Marcus. But you show up for the people you care about." The truth in her words settled over me like a heavy blanket. When had I stopped expecting Jessica to show up for me? When had I started making excuses for her absence from every milestone in my career, every moment that mattered to me? The thing is, I continued, she's not wrong about us growing apart. But I thought that was something to work through, not run from. Patricia was quiet for a long moment, watching a pair of cardinals building their nest in the small oak tree across from our bench. "Marcus, in my experience, there are two kinds of people in this world. The ones who see problems as puzzles to solve together, and the ones who see problems as reasons to quit. Sounds like you've discovered which kind you married." That evening, I packed my belongings while Jessica attended what she claimed was a work dinner, but which I suspected was a date with Brandon. The house felt hollow without her presence, but not in the way I had expected. Instead of missing her, I found myself noticing how little of me remained in our shared spaces. My books were confined to a single shelf in the den. My clothes took up less than a quarter of our walk-in closet. Even my favorite coffee mug had been relegated to the back of the cabinet, replaced by Jessica's collection of branded corporate gifts. When had I become a guest in my own home? Ryan's couch was surprisingly comfortable, and his spare room even more so when he insisted I take it instead. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Stay as long as you need, man," Ryan said, handing me a cold beer before dropping into his gaming chair. "But promise me you won't do anything reckless like trying to win her back." "Why would I do that?" I asked. "But Ryan, Just gave me that look, the one he'd perfected back in college. The look that said I was being deliberately obtuse. Because I know you, Marcus. You're going to blame yourself for everything. You'll convince yourself that if you just change enough, she suddenly realized what she lost. His words landed harder than I expected. Maybe there are things I should have handled differently. Sure. But from what you've told me, Jessica emotionally checked out way before she ever filed the paperwork. You can't guilt someone into loving you, no matter how much you care. That night, lying in Ryan's guest room surrounded by boxes of my hastily packed life, I realized the divorce wasn't the end of anything. It was just the start of something far messier. Jessica had casually mentioned that Emma was coming back, but her tone had held something else, something I couldn't quite name. A storm on the horizon. As Denver's city lights stretched toward the Rockies outside Ryan's window, I wondered where Emma was at that moment. She somewhere over the Atlantic? Already landing? Packing up her life abroad to return to a situation she didn't fully understand? I couldn't help but wonder how she'd react to Jessica's choices, and what she'd think of me. The man her sister had so easily discarded. What I didn't know then was that Emma's return would shake the foundation of all our lives. This wasn't just about a divorce. It was about loyalty, history, and the quiet, devastating difference between the love we believe we deserve, the kind that actually holds up under pressure. 3 weeks had passed since I'd moved into Ryan's place. Slowly, a new routine was forming, one that didn't orbit around Jessica's schedule for the first time in years. I started jogging at City Park every morning, picked up longer shifts at the hospital, got back into books I hadn't touched in ages, and even went hiking with Ryan on weekends when his girlfriend Sarah wasn't monopolizing his time. Divorce, as expected, was moving forward with the brutal efficiency Jessica applied to everything. Her lawyer, Victoria Crow's, a woman who dressed like she was heading into battle, had already sent over a draft of the asset split. Surprisingly fair, almost generous. Jessica wanted the house and offered to buy out my share. She kept her car, I kept mine. She even insisted I keep the investment portfolio we'd built together, claiming she didn't need it. The fairness felt like a slap, like she pitied me. And somehow, that hurt worse than if she'd tried to take everything. She's either trying to clear her conscience, or she's richer than we thought. Ryan joked as we sat at Mountain Brew, our new Saturday morning ritual. Probably Brandon's influence, I muttered, surprising myself with how neutral. I sounded Brandon, the Tesla guy, I clarified.
Oh.
If she's happy, then good for them. Ryan gave me a look that walked the line between admiration and concern. That's either emotional maturity or denial. I can't decide. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Jessica's name lit up the screen, a rare occurrence these days, since we'd kept communication strictly to legal matters and brief. Texts. Marcus. Her voice sounded tense, not its usual calm and in-control self. I need a favor. What kind of favor? Emma's flight got in early, and I'm stuck in a client pitch that's going to run at least 3 more hours. Can you pick her up from the airport? I know it's awkward, but she doesn't know anyone else in town yet, and airport rides are a nightmare right now. The irony nearly made me laugh. She wanted me to pick up her sister, the same sister who'd be living in my old house while she was probably playing house with the man she left me for. Jessica, seriously? Don't you think that's, I don't know, uncomfortable? Please, Marcus. I know this is complicated, but Emma shouldn't be punished because of our situation. She's been on a plane for 18 hours. There was something in her tone I hadn't heard in months. Vulnerability. The woman I fell for used to care deeply about things like this. What gate? I asked, already grabbing my keys. Southwest baggage claim. Dark brown hair, probably. Wearing all black. She'll be the one who looks like she regrets every choice that brought her back here. Thank you, Marcus. The drive to Denver International gave me plenty of time to question what the hell I was doing. I hadn't seen Emma in over 2 years since Jessica's birthday party, where Emma had tucked herself into a corner with a book, avoiding the crowd. She'd seemed quiet, polite, bookish. We'd never really connected. I was acting like family even as I was legally being removed from it. The baggage area was its usual chaos. families, couples, exhausted travelers swarming around carousels. I scanned the crowd and almost didn't see her. Emma Wilson had changed. Gone was the shy girl hiding behind baggy sweaters. In her place stood a woman who radiated quiet confidence. She wore a fitted black coat over jeans that managed to be both stylish and effortless. Her hair, shorter than I remembered, fell in soft waves around her face. She didn't try to stand out. She just did. Not in the flashy magazine spread way Jessica always had. Emma's presence was magnetic in a subtler way. Emma. I approached cautiously, suddenly self-conscious in my hiking clothes. She turned on. I froze. Her eyes were the same green as Jessica's, but warmer, softer. Recognition flickered. Across her face, then confusion. What are you doing here? Where's Jess? Stuck at work? She asked me to pick you up. I grabbed her suitcase from the carousel, sleek black, plastered with stickers from European cities. Hope this isn't too weird, all things considered. She watched me closely, as if reading beneath the surface. So it's true? You two are really splitting up. She didn't tell you? She said things were rough. It's not final. She motioned between us. As we walked toward the parking garage, she added quietly, I'm sorry, Marcus. I know I'm her sister, but I always thought you two made sense together. You balanced each other. Apparently balance isn't what she wanted. She stayed quiet until we reached my old Honda Civic, the same car Jessica had always rolled her eyes at. As I loaded the trunk, Emma said, softly, for what it's worth, I think she's making a mistake. The words caught me off guard. You don't need to say that. I'm not just being nice. I mean it. She climbed into the passenger seat. Jess jumps into love fast. But once the newness fades, she moves on. What you two had seemed real. I wasn't sure how to respond. It felt strange as loyal, even to talk about Jessica like this with her sister. So I changed the subject. How was Paris? Her whole face lit up. Incredible. Hard. Exactly what I needed. I worked with curators at the Musée d'Orsay, learned how to really see art, not just glance at it. Every day pushed me. Thanks. She spoke for the next 20 minutes, telling me about gallery openings, studio visits, village trips, and the cramped apartment she'd shared with 2 other students. Her excitement was contagious, and for the first time in a long while, I found myself actually interested in someone else's stories. As we merged onto I-25, she turned to me. But enough about me, Jess said. You got promoted to senior physical therapist, right? It's a big deal. I blinked, surprised she remembered her that Jessica had even brought it up. It's been good. More responsibility, better cases. I'm hoping to eventually open my own sports rehabilitation clinic.
Oh, that sounds perfect for you.
I remember at family dinners you always lit up when you talked about helping people recover. From injuries, it was obvious how much you loved it. The fact that Emma had paid attention to my career aspirations when Jessica apparently hadn't was both touching and depressing. Yeah, well, that's still a few years off. Need to save more money first. Speaking of money, Emma said carefully, I want you to know I'm not comfortable staying in the house. It feels wrong, like I'm taking advantage of the situation. Where else would you stay? Hotels are expensive, and you need time to find your own place. I could stay with friends or find a short-term rental. I've got some savings from my work in Paris. I glanced over at her, struck by her consideration for my feelings. Emma, it's fine. The house is Jessica's now, and she can have whoever she wants stay there. Besides, it's not like I'm living there anymore. Still, it has to be weird for you. Everything about this situation is weird. But you being in the guest room isn't the weird part. Emma was quiet for the rest of the drive, staring out the window at the familiar Denver skyline. As we pulled into the driveway of the Cherry Creek house I'd called home for 3 years, she said, This is surreal. The last time I was here, you and Jess were talking about maybe starting a family. The memory hit me like a physical blow. That had been 2 Christmases ago. Back when we still talked about the future in terms of we instead of I. Jessica had been excited about the idea then, or at least she'd seemed to be. Now I wondered if that had been another performance, another way of managing my expectations. Things change, I said simply. Emma turned to face me fully, her expression serious. Marcus, can I ask you something personal? Sure. Are you okay? Really okay? Because you seem like you're handling this divorce with suspicious grace, and I'm worried you're just bottling everything up. The question was so direct, so concerned, that I felt something crack open in my chest. When was the last time someone had asked about my emotional well-being, not as small talk, but as genuine care? I'm getting by, I said finally. Some days are harder than others, but you're not angry? I considered the question seriously. I was at first, but now I think I'm just sad. Sad that we couldn't figure out how to make each other happy. Sad that she felt like she had to choose between being honest and being kind. Emma nodded slowly. That sounds like a very healthy way to process it, but also very lonely. Before I could respond, the front door opened, and Jessica appeared. Looking polished and professional despite supposedly rushing from a work meeting, she hurried down the front steps, her heels clicking against the concrete. She called out, pulling her sister into a tight hug as soon as Emma got out of the car. I'm so sorry I couldn't pick you up myself. This client is being absolutely impossible. It's fine, Emma said, returning the hug with less enthusiasm than Jessica showed. Marcus was very kind to come get me. Jessica's eyes flicked to me over Emma's shoulder. I saw something flash across her face that might have been guilt, or gratitude, or something more complex I couldn't identify. Thank you, she said simply. No problem. I'll let you two catch up. I was already backing out of the driveway when I heard Emma call my name. She jogged over to my car window, slightly out of breath. I meant what I said earlier, she said quietly. So Jessica couldn't hear from the front porch. It's about thinking she's making a mistake. And if you ever want to talk, or just need a friend who understands complicated family dynamics, I'm around. She handed me a small piece of paper with her phone number written in neat handwriting. I know it's probably inappropriate, given the circumstances, but I believe in staying connected to good people, regardless of how I know them. As I drove back to Ryan's apartment, Emma's business card tucked into my pocket. I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just shifted. For the first time since Jessica had filed the divorce papers, I felt like someone saw me as more than just the abandoned husband or the predictable ex. Emma had seen me as Marcus, the person I was beyond my relationship status. It was a dangerous feeling, and I knew I should probably throw away her number and avoid any unnecessary contact. But as I pulled into Ryan's driveway, I found myself already wondering what Emma Wilson was really like when she wasn't just Jessica's quiet sister. Standing in the corner of family gatherings, the thought should have felt like a betrayal. Instead, it felt like the first glimpse of sunlight after a very long winter. 2 weeks after Emma's arrival in Denver, I hadn't used her phone number, not because I didn't want to, but because every time I pulled out that small piece of paper, Ryan's voice echoed in my head, warning me against rebounds in complicated situations. Dating your soon-to-be ex-wife's sister seemed like the definition of both, but Emma had other plans. I was leaving Mountain Brew on a Thursday morning, balancing my usual large coffee and a breakfast burrito when I nearly collided with someone. Coming through the door, coffee sloshed dangerously close to the rim of my cup as I stepped back, apology already forming on my lips, only to find myself face to face with Emma Wilson. She looked different than she had at the airport. It's more relaxed in dark jeans and a cream-colored sweater that made her green eyes even more striking. Her hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail. She carried a worn leather messenger bag that looked like it had traveled the world with her. Marcus, what are the odds? She smiled, and I noticed she had a small gap between her front teeth that somehow made her more beautiful, not less. I was just thinking about texting you. You were. I've been in Denver for 2 weeks, and I've spent most of that time unpacking and listening to Jess complain about her workload. I'm starting to go a little stir-crazy. She gestured toward the coffee shop. Mind if I join you? I promise I'm more interesting company than I was at family gatherings. I should have made an excuse. Should have claimed I was late for work, even though my shift didn't start for another 2 hours. Instead, I found myself holding the door open for her. I'd like that. Emma ordered something complicated involving oat milk and lavender syrup, which the barista prepared with a kind of reverence usually reserved for sacred rituals. We found a corner table near the windows, where morning sunlight streamed across the worn wooden surface. "So," she said, settling into her chair with the fluid grace of someone who had learned to make herself comfortable anywhere, "tell me about Marcus Thompson when he's not being the perfect gentleman picking up his ex-sister-in-law from the airport." The question caught me off guard. When was the last time someone had asked about me as an individual person, separate from my roles, as husband, healthcare provider, or a convenient favor doer? That's a loaded question. The best ones usually are. Hush. Emma took a sip of her elaborate coffee and leaned forward slightly. "Come on, what do you do when you're not at the hospital? What makes you happy?" "I go running, read medical journals, help Ryan fix things around his apartment that I probably make worse." I realized how pathetic that sounded. I used to hike more before Jess decided hiking was boring and preferred spa weekends in Aspen. The accuracy of her guess was unsettling. "How did you know that?" "Because I know my sister. She's never been interested in anything that doesn't come with immediate gratification or social media potential." Emma's expression softened. "That's not necessarily a character flaw, by the way. Some people need constant stimulation to feel alive. But it means she's probably not compatible with people who find joy in quieter things, like physical therapy and trail running. It's like being present in the moment instead of always chasing the next excitement." Emma traced patterns on the table with her finger. "In Paris, I learned to appreciate the art of slow mornings, long walks with no destination, conversations that last for hours because nobody's checking their phone. It sounds like you might appreciate those things too." Something in her tone made me look at her more carefully. "What aren't you telling me about your time in Paris?" Emma was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee cup like it might contain answers to questions she hadn't asked yet. "I was engaged," she said finally, "to a fellow art student named Philippa. We had this whole plan mapped out. He was going to open a gallery in Montmartre. I was going to be his curator. We'd live in this tiny apartment above a bakery and drink wine and debate impressionism until 3 in the morning. What happened? Reality happened. Felipe was brilliant at talking about art, but terrible at actually doing the work required to make dreams come true. He wanted the romantic idea of being a gallery owner, but he didn't want to deal with budgets or difficult artists or the thousand mundane decisions that turn dreams into businesses." Emma looked up at me. I realized I was doing all the emotional and practical labor while he got to be the charming visionary. Sound familiar? Parallel to my marriage was so obvious it was almost painful. "How long were you together?" 2 years. "I ended it 6 months ago, which is part of why I came back to Denver. I needed space to figure out who I am when I'm not managing someone else's potential." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. You breaking up with Philippe was the best decision I made in Paris. It taught me the difference between loving someone and loving the idea of who they could become if they just tried harder." Emma met my eyes directly. "Some people are worth the effort of building something together. Others just want someone to build something for them." The conversation was veering into territory that felt both dangerous and necessary. Talking about her ex-fiancé, but her words felt like a commentary on my marriage, a validation of feelings I'd been too guilty to acknowledge. "Can I ask you something personal?" I said. "A turnabout is fair play. Did you give me your number? Really?" Emma smiled, but this time it was tinged with something that looked like vulnerability. "Because in all the years I've known you, you're the only person in our family's orbit who ever asked me genuine questions about my life. At every holiday, every birthday party, you'd remember what I was studying, ask about my classes, listen. When I talked about art like it actually mattered to you, I didn't remember being particularly attentive, but Emma continued before I could protest. Jess would introduce me as her little sister, who was doing the art thing in college, like it was a phase I'd grow out of. But you'd ask about specific techniques I was learning or whether I'd seen certain exhibitions. It made me feel like my passion was worth taking seriously. Your passion is worth taking seriously. I know that now. But for a long time, I didn't. Growing up with Jess as a sister means growing up in someone's shadow. She's brilliant and successful and beautiful, and she makes everything look effortless. It's easy to feel like the consolation prize in comparison. I found myself leaning forward, drawn into Emma's honesty. No, she's not a consolation prize. No, she agreed, I'm not. But it took me going halfway around the world to figure that out. She paused, then added quietly, I gave you my number because I wanted to know the Marcus who exists outside of being Jessica's husband. And because I thought maybe you might want to know the Emma who exists outside of being Jessica's. Sister, the admission hung between us like a bridge neither of us was sure we should cross. Emma was right that we'd never really known each other as individuals, only as appendages to Jessica's life. But getting to know each other now, while my divorce was still pending and Emma was living in what used to be my house, felt like walking through a minefield. That could get complicated, I said. Most worthwhile things are complicated. Emma finished her coffee and checked her phone. I should get going. Have a job interview at the Denver Art Museum this afternoon. That's great. What position? Assistant curator for their contemporary collections. It's not as prestigious as what I was doing in Paris, but it's a start. She stood up and shouldered her messenger bag. Marcus, can I say something that might be overstepping? I nodded. I think you've spent so many years trying to be what other people needed that you've forgotten what you actually want.
Maybe.
It's time to figure that out. She was halfway to the door when I called after her. Emma, she turned back, eyebrows raised in question. I hope you get the job. And if you want to celebrate afterwards, or commiserate if it doesn't go well. I know some great hiking trails. No social media potential whatsoever. Her smile was radiant. I'd like that. After she left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, ostensibly reading patient files, but actually replaying our conversation. Emma was right that I'd lost track of what I wanted somewhere in the process of trying to save my marriage. But talking with her, I'd felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The thrill of genuine connection with someone who saw me clearly and liked what they saw. When my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica asking if I could stop by the house to pick up some mail that had been forwarded there, I almost ignored it. But responsibility and habit won out as they usually did. The house felt different when I walked in that evening. Emma's presence was subtle but noticeable, a book in French left open on the kitchen counter, fresh flowers in a vase on the dining room table, the scent of something that wasn't Jessica's usual vanilla candles, but something warmer, more complex. Marcus? Emma's voice called from upstairs. Is that you? Just picking up mail, I called back, rifling through the stack Jessica had left on the entryway table. How did the interview go? I asked, when Emma appeared at the top of the stairs. She was wearing paint-splattered jeans and an oversized shirt, her hair twisted up in a messy bun secured with what looked like a paintbrush. She looked younger, more relaxed than I'd ever seen her. I think it went well. They want me to come back next week for a second interview with the head curator. She started down the stairs, and I noticed she was barefoot. I've been stress painting in the guest room. Jess said it was okay as long as I don't get anything on the carpet. Stress painting. It's like stress seating, but more creative and less fattening. Emma grinned. Want to see? Promise is not terrible. Should have made an excuse. And left. Instead, I followed her upstairs to the guest room that used to be my home office. Emma had transformed the space completely. The walls were covered with canvases in various stages of completion, all painted in bold. Expressive strokes that seemed to capture movement and emotion rather than specific subjects. The room smelled like turpentine and possibility. Are incredible, I said, stopping in front of a painting that seemed to shimmer with captured light. Is this what you studied in Paris? Not exactly. These are just for me, not for galleries or critics or anyone else's approval. Emma picked up a brush and dabbed at a corner of the canvas she'd been working on. Sometimes you need to create something that exists just because you wanted it to exist. Standing in that transformed room, surrounded by Emma's uninhibited creativity, I felt something shift inside me. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about Jessica or the divorce or what I was supposed to do next. I was just present, in the moment, appreciating something beautiful that someone had created for the pure joy of creating it. Thank you, I said. For what? For reminding me that some things don't have to serve a purpose beyond making us happy. Emma sat down, her brush, and looked at me with those impossibly green eyes. Marcus, I need to tell you something. Before I could ask what, we heard the front door slam and Jessica's voice calling from downstairs. Are you up there? Red of. I'll put red a credit line your Emma's expression shifted instantly. The easy warmth I'd grown accustomed to, replaced by something guarded, intense. She quickly wiped her paint-stained hands on a rag and moved toward the door. I should go see what she wants, she said quietly. You can stay here if you want, or I'll come with you. We walked downstairs together, and I could feel the weight of unspoken tension between us. Whatever Jessica needed to discuss, the timing felt deliberately calculated, like she'd been waiting for exactly this moment to make her entrance. Jessica was standing in the living room, still in her work clothes, but looking distinctly frazzled. Her usually perfect hair was slightly messed, and there were stress lines around her eyes I hadn't seen before when she saw me following Emma. Down the stairs, her expression hardened. I didn't realize you'd be here, she said to me, her tone carefully neutral. Just picking up mail, I replied, holding up the stack of envelopes as evidence. I was about to leave. Actually, maybe it's better that you're both here. Jessica set her purse down with more force than necessary. We need to discuss living arrangements. Emma crossed her arms defensively. What about them? The situation isn't working. Having my ex-husband stopping by whenever he wants, you becoming friends, people seeing you together around town. It's awkward for everyone. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. People seeing us together. We had coffee once, Jessica, in a public place. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating facts. Sarah Chen. Saw you two at Mountain Brew yesterday, looking very cozy. She made a point of mentioning it to me at lunch today, with this look like she felt sorry for me. Emma's laugh was sharp and bitter. So this is about your reputation? About what your friends might think? This is about respect, Emma. For me, for our family, for the situation we're all trying to navigate. Jessica's voice was rising, the polished facade cracking to reveal something raw underneath. I know you think you're being supportive, but getting friendly with my soon-to-be ex-husband while living in my house is not appropriate. The possessiveness in her tone was infuriating, but what bothered me more was the way she was treating Emma like a child who couldn't make her own decisions about who to befriend. Your house? I said quietly. Our house, Jessica. The one we bought together, the one I helped pay for, the one where I lived until 3 weeks ago. Our former house, Jessica corrected, which is now my house, where my sister is staying as my guest. Emma stepped forward, and I could see anger flashing in her green eyes. I'm not your property, Jess, and neither is Marcus. You don't get to dictate who I'm allowed to talk to just because it makes you uncomfortable. I'm not being unreasonable. Here, I'm asking for basic consideration during an already difficult time. No, Emma said, her voice steady but sharp. You're being controlling. Just like when we were kids and you decided which friends I was allowed to have, which activities were worth my time, which dreams were realistic enough to pursue. Jessica's face flushed. That's not fair. I was trying to protect you from making mistakes, like the mistake of talking to Marcus. The man you were married to for 6 years, who you claim to love. Emma's words hung in the air like accusations. What exactly are you afraid of, Jessica? The question seemed to hit something deep, because Jessica's composure cracked completely. "I'm afraid of being made to look like an idiot," she snapped. "I'm afraid of people thinking that my husband left me for my younger, prettier sister. I'm afraid of becoming a cautionary tale at dinner parties." The admission was so raw, so vulnerable, that it caught all three of us off guard. For a moment, I saw past Jessica's anger to the fear underneath, and I almost felt sorry for her. "Jessica," I said gently, "nobody left anybody for anybody else. You filed for divorce, remember? You wanted out of our marriage? I know that. But other people don't know the details. They just see you moving on suspiciously quickly with someone who happens to look like a younger version of me." Emma flinched at the comparison, and I felt a surge of protective anger. "Emma is nothing like you," I said, more harshly than I intended. "She's kind, thoughtful, genuinely interested in other people's lives. She doesn't see conversations as negotiations, or relationships as transactions." The words were out before I could stop them, and I immediately regretted the cruelty of the comparison. Jessica's face went pale, then flushed bright red. "Get out," she said quietly. "Get out of my house right now, Jess." Emma started. "No, I've heard enough." Jessica's voice was shaking with rage or hurt or both. "Emma, you have until tomorrow to find somewhere else to stay. Marcus, if I see you anywhere near my sister again, I'll make sure you're divorced. Lawyer hears about it." The threat was empty and we all knew it, but the venom behind it was real. I looked at Emma, who was staring at her sister like she was seeing a stranger. "You don't mean that?" Emma said softly. "I absolutely mean it. You want to choose him? Over family loyalty? It's fine, but you don't get to do it under my roof." I grabbed Emma's arm gently. "Come on, let's go. My things. We'll get them tomorrow when she's at work." As we walked toward the door, Jessica called after us. "This is exactly what I was talking about. Emma, you've known him for 3 weeks, and you're already choosing him over me." Emma turned back, and I saw tears in her eyes. "I'm not choosing him over you, Jess. I'm choosing to be treated like an adult who can make her own decisions. There's a difference." We left Jessica standing in the living room of what used to be our home, surrounded by the life we'd built together and the sister she'd just banished from it. In the parking lot, Emma wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I'm sorry you had to see that. We don't usually have screaming matches, but when we do, where will you stay tonight? I'll figure something out. Hotel maybe, or stay with me. Ryan's got plenty of space, and his girlfriend basically lives there anyway. We can sort out something more permanent tomorrow." Emma looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Marcus, what Jessica said about people talking about this looking suspicious, do you care what people think? Not about me, but about you. If this damages your reputation, affects your career." I stepped closer to her, close enough to see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. "Emma, my marriage was over long before you came back to Denver. Maybe it was over before you even left for Paris. What happened in there wasn't about us being inappropriate. It was about Jessica realizing she's lost control of a narrative she thought she could manage. But we haven't done anything wrong." "No, we haven't. But we both know there's something here, don't we? Something that has nothing to do with Jessica or revenge or rebounds." Emma was quiet for a long moment, looking down at her paint-stained fingers. "I used to imagine what it would be like to come home to someone who actually wanted to hear about my day. Someone who'd ask about my work, not because they were being polite, but because they were genuinely interested in what mattered to me. And yesterday, having coffee with you, I realized I wasn't imagining anymore." Before I could respond, my phone rang. Ryan's name flashed on the screen. "Marcus, thank God. Are you okay? I just got a very strange call from Jessica, demanding to know if you and Emma were having an affair." I told her she was insane, but she seemed pretty convinced. I looked at Emma, who had obviously heard Ryan's voice through the phone. She was shaking her head, half laughing at the absurdity of it all. "We're fine, Ryan. It's a long story. Can we come over? Emma needs a place to stay tonight, of course. But Marcus." "Yeah." "Please tell me you're not actually having an affair with your ex-wife's sister." Emma was close enough to hear the question, and she reached for the phone. "Ryan, it's Emma. We're not having an affair. We're not even dating. We're just two people who apparently committed the crime of enjoying each other's company. Ryan was quiet for a moment. Emma,
Ow!
you sound different than I remember. More like someone who wouldn't put up with anyone's bullshit. Emma smiled for the first time since we'd left the house. 3 years in Paris will do that to a person. As we drove to Ryan's apartment, Emma stared out the window at the Denver skyline. Marcus, can I ask you something?
Always?
When Jessica accused us of having an affair, were you thinking what I was thinking? That she was projecting? Her own guilt about Brandon? No, I was thinking that maybe we should stop pretending we're just friends who happen to find each other at a complicated time. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Emma, I know it's messy. I know. The timing is terrible. I know it looks bad from the outside. She turned to face me fully. But I also know that I've never felt more like myself than I have these past few weeks. Talking to you, sharing things I've never told anyone else. What are you saying? I'm saying that maybe Jessica isn't entirely wrong to be worried. Not because we've done anything inappropriate, but because what's happening between us is real. And it's not going away just because she's uncomfortable with it. We pulled into Ryan's driveway, but neither of us made any move to get out of the car. The weight of Emma's words hung between us, heavy with possibility and consequence. If we do this, I said carefully, there's no going back. Jessica will never forgive either of us. Your family might take sides. People will assume we were having an affair during my marriage. I know. You could lose your sister permanently. Emma's expression was sad but resolute. I lost my sister the moment she decided I wasn't allowed to make my own choices about my own life. The question is, are you ready to stop letting Jessica's opinion dictate your decisions? Before I could answer, Ryan appeared on his front porch, waving us inside with the enthusiasm of someone who lived for interpersonal drama. Sarah was visible behind him, clearly dying of curiosity. Ready or not, Emma said softly, I think we're about to find out what we're really made of. 6 months later, I stood in the hallway of the Denver courthouse, adjusting my tie for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. Emma appeared beside me, radiant in a simple ivory dress that somehow managed to be both elegant and understated.
She carried
a small bouquet of wildflowers we'd picked during our morning hike in Red Rocks Park, still dewy from the mountain air. Having second thoughts? She asked, though her smile told me she already knew the answer. About marrying you? Never. About doing it 3 weeks after my divorce was finalized? Maybe we could have waited. Levis, Emma laughed, the sound echoing off the marble walls. We've been waiting our whole lives to find each other, Marcus. Besides, when you know something's right, why pretend otherwise? Ryan appeared around the corner with Sarah, both of them beaming like proud parents, ready to make this official? Ryan asked, slapping me on the back. Because I've got the rings, Sarah's got the camera, and Judge Morrison is ready when you are. The ceremony itself was simple, almost anticlimactically so after all the drama that had led us here. Emma and I exchanged vows we'd written ourselves, promising to support each other's dreams, to communicate honestly, even when it was difficult, and to remember that love was a choice we made every day, not just a feeling that happened to us. When Judge Morrison pronounced us husband and wife, Emma kissed me with the kind of joy that made the courthouse feel like a cathedral. Mrs. Thompson, I whispered against her lips. I like the sound of that, she whispered back. What? We emerged from the courthouse into brilliant Colorado sunshine, and I felt like I was seeing the world with new eyes. Emma had gotten the position at the Denver Art Museum. I had finally submitted the business plan for my sports rehabilitation clinic, and we'd found a small house in the Berkeley neighborhood that had enough space for Emma's art studio and my home office. Our life together felt like something we were building from scratch, with no predetermined expectations or inherited baggage. Every morning was a discovery, every conversation an adventure. So Ryan said as we walked to our cars, I hate to bring this up on your wedding day, but has anyone heard from Jessica lately? The question cast a brief shadow over the celebration. Emma's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Not directly, Emma said carefully. But I heard through Mom that she and Brandon broke up. Apparently he wasn't as interested in a serious relationship as Jessica thought. I felt a pang of something that might have been sympathy. Despite everything that had happened between us, I had never wanted Jessica to be unhappy. I had just wanted her to stop making me responsible for her happiness. Maybe she'll reach out eventually, I said. Emma shook her head. She won't. Jessica doesn't apologize, and she doesn't admit when she's wrong. Accepting that we're happy together would require doing both. Do you regret that? Losing your relationship with her? Emma considered the question seriously before answering. I regret that she chose pride over family, but I don't regret choosing my own happiness over her approval. For the first time in my life, I'm not trying to live up to someone else's expectations or manage someone else's emotions. I'm just being myself. As we drove to our small reception at a restaurant in the Highlands, I reflected on how much had changed since that night I'd overheard Jessica talking about me like I was a burden to be discarded. That version of myself felt like a different person entirely, someone who had been so focused on being what others needed that he'd forgotten who he actually was. What are you thinking about? Emma asked from the passenger seat. Just how different everything is now. How different I am. You're not different, Marcus. You're just finally yourself. The reception was intimate, just our closest friends. And Emma's parents, who had driven up from Colorado Springs, her mother had hugged me tightly when we arrived, whispering, "Thank you for making my daughter smile like that." Her father, a quiet man who taught high school literature, had shaken my hand firmly and said, "Emma tells me you see her for who she really is." That's all any parent can hope for. As the evening wound down and our friends began to drift away, Emma and I found ourselves alone on the restaurant's patio, looking out over the city lights. She was leaning against my shoulder, her wedding bouquet forgotten on the table beside us. "Do you think we're crazy?" she asked. "Getting married? So quickly after everything?" "Probably. The good kind of crazy. The kind that makes life worth living instead of just enduring." "Exactly that kind." Emma sat up and turned to face me fully. "Marcus, I need to tell you something I've never told anyone."
What?
When I was in Paris, struggling with Felipe, and feeling lost about everything, I used to think about family gatherings back home. Not because I missed them, but because I missed the way you made me feel like my thoughts mattered. You were the only person who ever asked follow-up questions, who remembered details from previous conversations. Emma, let me finish.
You had a crush on you for years, long before I went to Europe.
But you were Jessica's, and Jessica always got what she wanted, so I learned to push those feelings down and pretend they didn't exist. When I heard about your divorce, my first thought wasn't sympathy for Jessica. It was hope. The confession hung between us like a bridge spanning years of unspoken longing. "Do you feel guilty about that?" I asked. I did at first. But then I realized that hoping for a chance at happiness isn't the same thing as wishing unhappiness on someone else. Jessica made her choice when she filed those papers. Everything that happened after that was fair game.
Ow.
A month later, we received an unexpected wedding gift in the mail. No return address. But Emma recognized her sister's handwriting immediately. Inside the box was a small painting, one of Emma's pieces from art school that Jessica had apparently kept all these years. It was a landscape of the Colorado mountains. It was painted in soft pastels that somehow captured both the majesty and the serenity of the peaks. Attached was a note in Jessica's precise script. "You always did see beauty where others saw ordinary things. I hope you're happy." It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was acknowledgement. I cried when she read it. Not from sadness, but from a sense of closure she hadn't realized she needed. "Do you think she means it?" I asked, holding Emma while she composed herself. "I think she means it as much as she's capable of meaning anything that isn't about her directly," Emma said. "But it's something." We hung the painting in our bedroom, where we could see the mountains every morning when we woke up. It served as a reminder that even endings could contain unexpected gifts, and that sometimes the most beautiful things emerged from the most difficult circumstances. 2 years after our courthouse wedding, Emma curated her first major exhibition at the museum, a collection of contemporary works about resilience and transformation. I opened my rehabilitation clinic in a converted warehouse space that allowed me to combine physical therapy with outdoor adventure programs. On quiet evenings, we would sit on our back porch and marvel at the life we'd built together, not in reaction to what we'd lost, but in celebration of what we'd found. We had learned that love wasn't about completing each other or fixing each other's broken pieces. It was about choosing to grow together, to support each other's individual journeys while creating something entirely new between us. Jessica never reached out again after the wedding gift. But we heard through mutual acquaintances that she had moved to Seattle and started her own marketing firm. I hoped she was happy, in whatever way happiness looked like for her. As for Emma and me, we discovered that the best revenge against those who underestimate you is living so fully and authentically that their opinion becomes irrelevant. We weren't the consolation prize or the rebound story. We were the main event, a love story that almost didn't happen because we were too busy being who others expected us to be instead of who we actually were. Sometimes the greatest rebirth comes not from dramatic gestures or grand declarations, but from the quiet courage to choose connection over convention, authenticity over approval, and love over fear. Up next, you've got two more standout stories, right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Let's click and check them out.